And it is my priority to make sure we have that balanced, integrated transportation system that allows people to get around the city no matter how they do it. This is important to the safety and to the quality of life of the residents of the city. I don't want people to be frustrated, whether it's because they're sitting in traffic or because they can't get around by their chosen means of transportation or because they feel unsafe. I've said before, I don't want people to become reckless as drivers because of that frustration. And that's not making an excuse for recklessness at any time. But people do end up putting the lives of others in danger when they're in a hurry because they feel there is no flow to the traffic. I think it is our job and my job as the mayor to make sure people can move around, that the traffic does flow, that people, most importantly of all, are safe no matter what it is we're doing. I will declare here, because it's frequently said by some particular groups and individuals, there is no war on cars in Toronto. There will be no war on cars in Toronto. I think that is a provocative, polarizing way to look at this. But what we do have to do is to deploy all of the tools that are available to us to make sure that all of our transportation networks are working well, including transit, cycling, pedestrians, cars, in order to reduce both conflict and congestion. Today, the reality is there are more groups of people, more modes of transportation that are wanting to share limited transportation corridors. The transportation corridors exist, and we have to look at each one of those groups and each one of those modes of transportation and make sure that we're accommodating their wish to share in those corridors, foremost pedestrians, but also cyclists. It is not about a conflict or a war. It is about a 21st century sharing of transportation corridors in a modern city like Toronto. One of the things I learned in my preliminary discussions with Barbara is that they also take the opportunity in a place like Seattle to do continuous monitoring and updating using a lot of data. And we just began to do that here in the last 2 years. Previous to my being here and some of the efforts we made to sit down with Barbara's predecessor, we were not obtaining any data. We weren't using it as a means of trying to figure out how well we were doing at sharing it. So these things were all important to us, all of us, as we went about the task of hiring a new general manager for transportation at such an important moment in time for the city. And so the process, under the direction of City Manager Peter Wallace, looked far and wide for someone who could bring a 21st century approach to this, who could help our city through what is a very important transition that we're going through, an evolution in the way we look at transportation, and somebody who could work with both City Council, with the staff, and with the public to address these shared transportation challenges. And all of that led us to Barbara Gray, who joins us from the city of Seattle, where it is currently 9 degrees. That's in Celsius, Barbara. It's 9 degrees there, just to sort of point that out to her. We're not trying to make her feel bad, but if you look at her resume, and I was certainly impressed, and it made for a much longer interview. I had a chance to interview her only on Skype before she was offered the position. And it was amazing the degree to which she has had exposure and involvement in and professional experience in every one of the areas that I have mentioned this morning and more, because her background goes well into other aspects of land use planning and urban planning that go beyond the transportation sector. But if you look at the transportation sector alone, she has overseen daily operations for policy planning, transit, right-of-way management, public realm divisions, and this has led to key roles in developing and delivering Seattle's Complete Streets programs, the strategy for that, improving bus, rapid transit and streetcar service, line extensions, pedestrian safety, cycling, and so on. And so I think what it means is that she brings to this job an understanding from a variety of angles, which is going to be important to this task we have to evolve our transportation system from what was much more focused on cars alone to a transportation network, a system that is going to make sure that we can share the transportation corridors between and among all the different ways that people want to get along. And so it is my honor as the mayor to welcome Barbara as one one of our newest public servants, where she will work in her role very closely with Councillor Jay Robinson, with the Public Works Committee, with all the members of City Council, and with me to make sure that we can address these shared priorities. And our first formal meeting this morning, while we had a couple of meetings last week, even to review some items that were on the City Council agenda, was one in which we touched on all of these different things that I have mentioned here today. And Jay will have more to say about these priorities, but I can summarize mine. Safety above all else. Safety is something that we must focus on. We are focused on it. We are doing more than we did before, but there is still much more to be done. Safety, especially, of course, for pedestrians. Sharing and innovation. These are priorities, again, of mine as we move to have the transportation corridors, limited as they are, shared by more groups of people, and greater mobility for everybody, including motorists and cyclists. I want to just take one moment before I introduce Jay to say thank you to Ashley Curtis and Mike D'Andrea. When Stephen Buckley, our previous General Manager of Transportation, announced his intention to go back home to the United States in the summer, Ashley and Mike stepped in to lead this division. They did it with focus, they did it with determination, with sensitivity, and with calmness. And we moved a lot of things forward even during the summer months as we moved to implement and accelerate our road safety plan and things like that. And I want to commend them for that, because it is an area that is of great focus in this city at this time for a variety of valid reasons. It's a great personal focus of mine, which complicates their job to some extent. And so I just want to say thank you to them for their leadership over the interim period while we searched for Barbara. And I want to say to Barbara that while there may be days when you will be frustrated, as is the case, I guess, with many of these senior public service jobs because of the keen interest taken by the Mayor and by others in public life, that we are incredibly lucky to have somebody with your professional qualifications here. We have a lot of work to do. It is a very high priority of this city government and this administration, and I'm looking forward to working with you. The day-to-day task of leading in this area has fallen to Jay Robinson, a councillor who I entrusted with this responsibility when I asked her to chair the Public Works Committee. And I think the output that has come under her leadership from that committee has been huge in terms of the changes that we have been making, with much, much more to be done. But I thank her for her leadership and ask her to say a few words now about our transportation priorities as Barbara joins us. Jay?